name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you're tuning in from. Tennis stops, and tennis is occurring across 3 continents kind of at the moment. I mean, we're sort of Alcaraz obviously playing in Rotterdam last week, Shapovalov in Dallas, Buenos Aires getting underway as we speak. So we've got sort of 3 continents to talk about. There's also another tournament in Europe this week, I think, if I'm right. Is it Marseille, Damien, this coming week?
Yep.
So we've still got a little bit going on in Europe as we speak. Things are underway, of course, in Buenos Aires, but we'll come to that probably a bit towards the end of the show. I think it's obviously right that we start with the 2 500 titles, and I think we should start with Alcaraz in Rotterdam. You, me, and Fergus were talking a couple of days ago about the final between Alcaraz and de Minaur. One of us suggested it would be pretty competitive, probably 3 sets, and a win for Alcaraz. And that someone, by the way, was me. If it wasn't me, then I probably wouldn't be mentioning it. But I did expect a... What are you shaking your head for, Damien?
Because realistically, it was like one of these matches where nobody won. You know, did Alex have a shot? Yes. But were there also patches where like Carlos starts playing much better and, you know, it's just a complete mismatch? Yes. So, like, yeah, it's a match where nobody won. Also, you know, I don't know, it's like bringing up the predictions generally is a bit of an ick for me.
Yeah.
It's a red flag. It's a red flag. I'm not going to date you. Hi, Jake. See you again. I mean, I was there on the show like 2 days ago, but yeah, sure. See you. Good to see you as well.
So I didn't see Jake's comment, not yet anyway. Hi, Jake, as well, and hi, Ghosty, as well. Yeah, I think what I was mostly trying to suggest was that, in fact, I more than trying to suggest, was just that if it was de Minaur against Sinner, it wouldn't interest me. I don't think predictions would be particularly clever unless you went for a de Minaur shock win and it ended up happening. Whereas I just think that
wasn't it their best match? Like Rotterdam final, wasn't that maybe the best match in the history of that rivalry? Even Sinner de Minaur.
Isn't that telling you something?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, it still was straight sets. It still was relatively straightforward, but I think Alex probably played the best match against Yannick in that Rotterdam final. Yeah.
Let's talk about the match itself. I thought the second set was actually, I think de Minaur dominated the second set. Alcaraz was not hanging with de Minaur in the rallies, and I think even our good Portuguese friend José Morgado was suggesting that. Not that I'm saying he's necessarily the oracle when it comes to tennis analysis, but yeah, I think the second set was one that went, and de Minaur could have broken 3 times in that set, but in the end, it was just 1 break of serve, I believe, and that was enough. However, I think we did return to the norm in the third set. Give us your thoughts on, you know, Alcaraz's match, but also the week itself.
I mean, as a whole, you know, first indoor title. I'm not going to count the next gen finals. Okay, I'm going to give you guys that. Yes, this was the first indoor title that he won. That includes the Challenger Circuit as well, or the ITF Tour. He won a couple of ITFs in Spain on hard courts, but that was outdoors. But either way, this is not important right now. I don't know why I'm talking about it. But like, yeah, it's an important step, definitely. It's not something that's going to like win him a slam here, but just like rebuilding confidence, getting a little bit more of that, you know, good feeling, winning feeling in conditions that so far have been pretty tricky for him. Even if maybe, you know, as we have said many times, the indoor season has little relevance, let's say, in terms of the biggest titles, simply because only the ATP finals really and one ATP 1000 is played there. But I think that throughout the week his level was pretty spotty. Like, let's be honest about it. he did still have the good patches. I mean, from 2-all in the third against the minor, like the match is kind of over. But yeah, I mean, against Hurkacz, obviously, we can also kind of start questioning whether from 1-4 love 40 in the opening set, if Carlos loses that set, what happens from there? But again, he just starts playing at a level that is unattainable to the other players, to Hurkacz in that case, for a few games, and it's enough. So was this a perfect week for Alcaraz? Definitely not. But Berrettini was playing, by the way, in Nurland. Berrettini lost in the opening round to Talon Hrigspor. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Carlos, it's good to win the title. It wasn't the best week we've ever seen from him, but still, this isn't really a tournament that's going to set him up for the next few months, right? I mean, we've got Indian Wells and Miami coming, different conditions. Then, of course, the clay season. So it's like a one-off in many respects, right? So it's perfectly fine, of course, for him to be, winning this, but maybe not playing his best.
What do you think about, I think we did touch upon it a couple of days ago, what do you think about his decision? If you can just forget the financial element, I'm guessing that Rotterdam did give him a nice paycheck, and maybe that paycheck was better than what he was offered in South America, maybe not. But what do you think about the decision to play indoor in Rotterdam rather than the Golden Swing?
Yeah, I don't know if the paycheck was necessarily better, but it probably just made a bit more sense for him, simply like in terms of the structure of the season, right? The last 2 years, the Golden Swing didn't really help him in some respects. Well, we can't say that it didn't, since he won Indian Wells twice, so it definitely didn't hamper him, even when he had the ankle issue. But all in all, I mean, the Golden Swing is relatively, it's not really like the spot, the stage for players like this to shine, right? It's like a very oddly specific part of the season, which is great to watch, but it's not gonna mean all that much in terms of the warm-ups and the lead-ups to other stuff. Even with this title, I think Carlos kind of does more, maybe not necessarily towards Indian Wells or Miami, but towards the end of the season, where he's once again going to be playing indoors and it's conditions he hasn't mastered yet. Okay, they're not going to be quite as slow as these ones in Rotterdam, but maybe even in the bigger picture of the entire season, it just makes a lot more sense to play Rotterdam or Dallas. I mean, if you play Dallas and then let's say Acapulco, who cares? What a version of this rather than going with the Golden Swing again. I think, in terms of the structure of the season, it makes a lot more sense. I can't tell you which tournament offered bigger money, but of course the Golden Swing is relatively fine. They just basically swapped Alcaraz for Zverev. Relatively fine. It's not the same draw, yes, but still.
Do you think de Minaur has improved even, I think it's clearly he's improved in the last year or two, but do you think he's even improved maybe in the last 6 months?
Last 6 months, probably not. I mean, he had that knee injury, hip, right? Hip injury.
Mm-hmm.
Hip, was it? Hip, yeah, I think it was hip injury at Wimbledon, and then of course he can't play for a few months. Still makes the US Open quarters somehow on one leg, and I think the last 3 months were definitely just more of playing the same as before. He can beat anybody right now. The way that he was getting through the draw here, you've got players like Menchik, who else was there in his run? Bellucci in the semis, of course. Altmaier. You just expect him to crush guys like this. And crush maybe isn't the right word with Alex and how his play style looks. But that's the sort of discrepancy between his quality and the other guys. And as long as he can do this against everybody, that's already, part of the job done. That's something that's going to keep him in the top 10. That's something that's going to keep him reaching finals like this. Still, the question is whether he can beat the top guys. And for now, we haven't really seen it. I see you guys are comparing the Dallas and Rotterdam prize money. We are not talking about prize money. We're talking about an appearance fee, which could be very, very different. And it's obviously off the table. So it's under the table, I wanted to say. So it's not really going to be specified. Sometimes they have, I remember Vienna, was it, that said how much they wanted to pay Nadal for playing. But generally speaking,
which year was that, by Nadal?
I don't remember, but one of the last few years.
Okay. I just don't remember him playing there for quite some time. Vaguely remember him playing Basel maybe towards the end of Federer's career. But
They
that's
played the
also a
final.
schedule.
They played the final in Basel
Yeah.
in 2015.
27
Yeah, but he
of his-
played Basel. He played Basel a few times. He also had that match against Rosol, lost to Chorich. Then he, but also I think Dave, it's more than that. 200, 300. I think it's more than that. We've heard of some like almost millionish appearance fees before. Of course, Alcaraz isn't really at the level of Nadal, Federer, or Djokovic yet. But I think like 500,000 is probably what you have
He is
to pay.
indoors. He's indoors. He's at Alcaraz. He's at Nadal's level already.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one title each, definitely. And if you count the next gen finals, Carlos is already a better player than Nadal, I guess. By the way, I mean, I was taken aback when I saw this screenshot. I mean, Pedro Martinez, number 2. Okay,
Forehand
sure.
quality, tennis insights.
He is a very
yeah.
forehand-oriented player, but like, yeah,
Maybe
that's kind
also
of
he just
surprising.
had time to hit it a little bit more in Rotterdam.
That is very true. Yeah, I mean, it is a very clayish event at some points. This Rotterdam. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was very slow the last few years, and now it was even worse. Alex as well is number 4, so that also kind of tells you that maybe sometimes these stats, can be a bit misleading. Of course, he's not really based on the forehand quality.
No, indeed. A couple of the players on that screen I would like to talk about. Well, actually, one player who's not on that screen. Actually, I'd like to talk about is Bellucci. Did his run to the semi-final surprise you? And tell us, and a few people in the chat maybe who are not aware of his game, and tell us a bit more about him.
I mean, he looks like Ons Jabeur, and he kind of plays like Ons Jabeur. He's just
That's
very
good.
crafty.
That's good. That's exciting.
Yeah, I do love his game. I think he's just very crafty, very intelligent. So many different game plans he can like possibly come up with. The serving, maybe it wasn't the star this week, but like for his height, I think his angles on the lefty serve are just insane too. And he obviously can do it all. Like drop shot lob combos are phenomenal. The slices, even of the forehand side, he slices the ball so much. He goes to the net while still backing it up with powerful ground strokes, obviously. Was it a surprising run? Sort of. I mean, the last month or so, I don't think that much was clicking in Bellucci's game. Montpellier, of course, maybe the loss to Kovacevic looks a bit better in hindsight, but still that's a match where you would assume that he might maybe take advantage of the fact that he's a lefty against the one-hander a bit more. But in the end, also, Medvedev, Tsitsipas, kind of similar opponents, right? Just players who are not at their peaks right now, who are really like at a crossroads, and Bellucci did very well to take advantage of that. It's there's no reason why the guy shouldn't be like 50, 60-ish in the world. He has almost nothing to defend until Roland Garros qualies, because last year until Roland Garros his season was like horrible. Then basically from that point onwards he became a top 100 player level wise. It took a while for that ranking to get there. But yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely about like a 50, 60 in the world power ranking wise right now, definitely for sure. And yeah, I mean, Tsitsipas, Medvedev, even if they are not, peaking, even if maybe in 3 years, if someone beats Medvedev and Tsitsipas back to back, we'll still say, yeah, I mean, it's big names. It's still impressive to get guys like this who are so experienced, who have spent so much time on the tour in these sort of matches. But you also have to note that they are kind of lost at the moment.
Sorry, I do want to just address this from Jake in the chat. I thought he was saying hello to somebody he didn't like, if you know the meaning of the second word, in British English at least. I thought he was saying hello to, yeah, but he wasn't. He's obviously talking about Bellucci, I guess. By the way, Bellucci is probably not particularly popular in the Netherlands right now, given the nationality of his 3 first opponents, including the qualifying. But actually, I think it's quite an impressive run that he had, straight sets for those first 3 rounds, if you include the 2 qualifiers, but also skittling Medvedev and Tsitsipas, who, therefore, Damien, if you were a fan of either, who should you be more concerned about, Medvedev or Tsitsipas right now? I mean, Tsitsipas did have that, that good win, if you like, before losing to Bellucci, but I think it kind of was a bit of a false dawn, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there are many angles from which you can look at it. I mean, first of all, with Daniil, the issues feel more recent, or at least the extent of these issues feel more recent. Whereas, like Steph, for a year now, he's been like this on hard courts, right? So maybe you expected a bit more. But at the same time, if I'm comparing these 2 performances between them, like, yeah, Stefanos was a lot more baffling, I think, in their match. Like Daniil still gave a pretty good fight, just couldn't hit through the conditions. But in terms of Daniil, it's a sharper decline. Like the last, I don't know, 3-4 months, it's a sharper decline than Steph. So he was starting from a higher point, but it's a sharper decline. So I don't know. I think I would still state Tsitsipas just because, well, the match was not as interesting as Medvedev against Bellucci was. There wasn't that tension, drama element to it, and a good fight. But both of them, I mean, yeah, alarm bells are ringing big time.
Yeah, I will address Nerland's very big tennis-related question in a second, because for once I feel pretty comfortable answering it. But I want to come back to these two guys. I think for me, bigger picture, there's also two angles to have as well. One is with Medvedev. I think there's a lot of reasons to be concerned because I just don't know where the next big title is coming from. Yes, he might play a 250 and pick up a title there, but I don't see a path to victory for him on grass, on clay for sure. I know he's got that Madrid title in the bag, that Rome title in the bag, but I really can be concerned. Whereas with Tsitsipas, I can say, well, listen, let's just see how he is during the clay court season. If he has a terrible clay court season, well, then you can be super, super worried about him. But if he does at least threaten across the 1000s on clay, and there is still a really good run for him, maybe even to the final in Paris, if he can avoid Alcaraz in particular. Whereas with Medvedev, I think there's more concerns. But at least if you're a Medvedev fan, you've got it. You've got your Rome title that I just mentioned. Even more so, you've got that US Open title, and you've got some Grand Slam finals. And it does matter. But you'll always have that, a bit like with Dominic Thiem. You'll still have that Grand Slam in the bag, whereas you don't with Steph. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, with Danilo, I think it's also the case that, even if the season goes horribly for him, he's still going to make his semis, his quarterfinals somewhere. He's not going to be losing to Bellucci every single event for the entire year. I don't think so, at least. So I think, he's still going to be kind of in the mix. But yeah, Tsitsipas has a horrible clay season, and suddenly we're talking about a top 25 player or something like that. That would be rough. But
just regarding what Jake's saying here, Damien, I still think for Stefanos, it's only one elite matchup that has really been a problem for him. I still think that, maybe on his day against Djokovic, don't forget in the Olympic quarterfinal.
I don't think Djokovic is the problem. I mean, Sinner.
No.
Let's
but
remember
even
Sinner.
I think on clay, I think Stefanos could. I would fancy, conversely, compared to that De Minaur situation with Alcaraz, with Tsitsipas, I just, the Damien, I'm not even bothering to switch this TV on for this match. Completely understandable for Stefanos against Alcaraz. Whereas I think actually at the beginning of Stefanos Tsitsipas, I would tune in. I would tune into Stefanos Yannick at the beginning, and then if it started to fade away, switch over to another match. Conversely, with Alcaraz, I would only tune in if he took a set, and then I would be like, oh, okay, things could get interesting here. Does that make sense?
I think I don't think so. I think we just haven't gotten them playing too many times recently, Tsitsipas and Sinner. Of course, the one time that they did in Monte Carlo, Sinner got injured in the last few games. But I think, yeah, tomorrow they play in, let's say, Rome or something like that. I am not too excited about it. I think that Sinner is just so much better than Stefanos in basically all aspects of the game at the moment. But yeah, I mean, the pressure will be on Steph once more during the clay season. Last year, he kind of fended it off just right away, right? By winning Monte Carlo and then reaching the final in Barcelona. That's already a huge chunk of points there. So if he can do that again, obviously that would be the ideal scenario for him.
Hurkacz made the semis as well, pushing Alcaraz to 3 sets. It was obviously up 4-1 in that first set and actually had 3 break points for a double break lead, and that's where it all kind of went wrong. The second set was very much more solid from both players on serve, and therefore it went to the tie break. But again, there was a twist because Alcaraz was break and had to just hold his serve on the tour for his next 2 points to win that set, but Hurkacz turned it around. I guess overall a positive week for Hubie.
100%, yeah. I mean, it was his best run in Rotterdam, and just you want improvement after Australia, right? When it seemed like things were working kind of, towards the good, and then eventually he has that horrible performance against Kecmanovic. But yeah, coming back from an injury, new coach. Yeah, it seems like stuff is really, happening right now for Hurkacz, let's say. He's going to take a little bit of a different route this year as well, playing Acapulco, which apparently Masu sort of convinced him to do. He's not going to be in Doha or Dubai. He's only playing Marseille, then skipping a weekend in Acapulco, so that's going to be quite exciting too. And of course, I mean, it's no like a major mystery that they are trying to work on that forehand, that they are trying to make him more aggressive from that wing. It's kind of needed if he wants to win big matches, big titles. Four performances against Alcaraz, 4 very good ones over the years. All of them he lost. Kind of the story of his career, but yeah, I mean, I am quite positive, definitely, after this week regarding Hurkacz's prospects for the rest of the year. Seems like if there is an opportunity that opens up somewhere, he definitely could be a guy to take it. We still haven't seen him actually, show us that he can beat Carlos and Yannick, right? But if there is that sort of like opening revolving door moment at some point, or like the stars are aligning, yeah, I think that definitely he should be in the mix.
Was Masu in Rotterdam?
I don't even remember, to be honest. I watched the semis for sure, but I don't even remember.
No, I don't recall seeing either him or Lendl there. Of course, they are both part of the setup. Is Hubie, I think you did sort of touch on this, is he playing a little bit more aggressively, do you think, Ghosty asking here?
Yeah, I mean, this is literally what they're trying to do. And yeah, of the forehand side, he has to take it a bit earlier. He's got that great inside in. He can kind of have volley as well offensively. Maybe on a court where he can get to the net a bit more easily, it's going to be better. But I think since the very beginning of the season in Australia, like, we just are basically seeing this year how much of a weapon just like Hurkacz's net play reach is. And yeah, he has to be tapping into that more and more, especially against opponents like this, definitely. And when it comes to your Lendl question, Matthew, I mean, I think it was said that, like, obviously Masu is the main coach, Lendl is the consultant, and Ivan is going to be there at like some events, and yeah, is going to be involved, less than Nico during the year, but he's going to be at some events, basically. We don't know how many, but at some events. Probably more so in the States, I would assume. And do I often feel that his aggression dips in and out on the forehand? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? You know that you have a problem shot. If the pressure comes, then you sometimes get a lot too passive. I mean, it's very natural, and something else that he kind of needs to work on. I wonder. I mean, I was actually thinking about this week, but we're never going to get an answer like this from Hurkacz, like even if he finishes his career. But I wonder if one day, someone asked him the question, like, did you stick with Craig Boynton for a little bit too long? What's the answer there? And I think Hurkacz, because of who he is as a person, he's never gonna tell us anything interesting to a question like this. But I would like to know the answer.
Yeah. Okay. I'm guessing you probably have a suspicion on the answer to that question, Damien. At least your own.
We will find out shortly, right? I mean, but for now, it's kind of looking like maybe, because yeah, I mean, his game was just really stale, and finally we're seeing some renewed energy.
Let's switch continents, dash across the ocean, and arrive in Dallas, where we had Denis Shapovalov beating Casper Ruud in the final in straight sets. How pleased, how surprised are you? Oh, actually, just before we do that, Nerland, regarding your apples question, I do not refrigerate apples, basically, is the short answer on that one. Anyway, you do refrigerate apples?
Yeah. I mean,
Why?
honestly, I just refrigerate every single fruit or vegetable simply to keep them the shelf life for it to be longer. Like, that's
I think they're not as. I think you lose some of the nutrients, though, right?
I don't think so. In tomatoes, you do. I don't think you lose them in apples, though.
If I like start eating a banana but don't want to eat it all, let's say it's just before.
Yeah, bananas as well. I think you lose some of the nutrients. Yeah.
I will just, if I take a bite or two out of it, I will put that in the fridge before returning. But as much as anything, it's just to keep the flies off it, really. But anyway, yeah, I don't refrigerate many. Although, funny enough, tomatoes I am tempted to. But anyway, there we go. We've done the fruit and veg thing tick. By the way, do let us know in the live chat whether you qualify tomatoes as a fruit or a vegetable. I think it is officially a fruit, by the way. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Damien.
I mean, it's kind of both, but yes, technically it's a fruit. Yes, in terms of like the sheer, like the part of the whole bush that you eat is a fruit. Yeah, definitely.
This will make interesting if Denis Shapovalov is tuning in right now, and we've got a picture of him like here on the screen, and we're talking about tomatoes and whether they're a fruit or not. Sorry, Denis, we'll get to your title-winning run. And yeah, so basically my question, which before I got sidetracked there, surprising for me it is. I know he won that title at the end of last year, the 250 in Belgrade, I think it was, wasn't it? But I don't know. I kind of been sleeping on him for a few years, really.
I think so many people were. Honestly, I was quite frustrated at some points last year. Like, well, maybe it's also some new fans coming in, who don't remember the peak days of Shapovalov. But like, it seems like the sentiment towards him last year was like, I remember so many guys in the chat as well saying that, like, when I said stuff like, I don't know, with a healthy year, Shapovalov will be in the top 30, like easily. Like everybody was like, no, what are you talking about? I mean, how? And like, I don't know, how is he different to someone like Nick Kyrgios, for example? I remember Keen being in the chat and saying that, Nick Kyrgios, if he just plays 10 events in a season, will be top 30. Like, what's the difference between Shapovalov and Kyrgios in terms of like natural talent? I think there's literally none. And perhaps, yeah, it's just like recency, well, bias, not in this case, but like the fact that people were just kind of like forgot how good Shapovalov can be. Of course, this is still, his first ATP 500 title, definitely. So it's not like this is something that he was doing before his injury, but he did have a 500 final, a 1,000 final, and I don't think Jake, he was actually playing with more margin this week. I think he was actually playing with like his normal game. It was just like really clicking for him. I saw some funny tweets as well, which I didn't really agree with. For example, someone saying today that like there was a quote from Shapovalov that, you have to give yourself the chance to win or something like that. You have to go for your shots, right? And someone was basically saying that this attitude is so good for Shapo. But at the same time, I feel like that same person probably would have said something very different, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, right? That's something we always criticized Shapovalov for, that he doesn't have any plan B. He's just coming out there and hitting insane shots, and sometimes it's not going to be sustainable. But obviously he's still like very like unhumanly talented, and yeah, it's just good to see him having a run like this. Sometimes, and last year when he won Belgrade, I remember a friend of mine texting me that like, wow, this is so shocking. I'm like, well, Shapovalov wins a 250 title indoors. Like, I know it's only his second, but man, I mean, let's just stop treating him like he's, I don't know, Alexander Miller who won Hong Kong this year, right? So I'm glad that he has this. Maybe he's gonna be back seated in slams. Is it sort of like, is his biggest slam achievement already behind him, or is he gonna have more? Now this is kind of what we're gonna be looking at, right? Whether he can keep sort of like return to that level where he was a threat in bigger events from time to time. But yeah, obviously this was just like a perfect week for Shapovalov here, and finally people will have to kind of like remember how good he was in his prime.
Yeah, I put a question out on Twitter a couple of days ago. I'm just trying to find it so I get it exactly right. But it was comparing or questioning which of Chapo and Felix kind of, if one of them, okay, I think it was more or less this, if one of Chapo or Felix are going to win a 1,000 this year, which one is it and kind of why? Because both of them are sort of, both of them have sort of, been these players that have probably frustrated the hell out of their fans in particular.
Yeah.
Probably both players have very high peak, shown us glimpses of potentially winning a Grand Slam one day. In Chapo's case, I'm thinking 2022 now. In terms of, maybe that was the year that he was, probably the year he was closest to, and it 5 sets with Nadal, and probably should have won that 5th set. And I think just tactically and mentally probably threw that away. And if you're going to have a tactical and mental breakdown, you don't want to be having it against Rafa Nadal, because he's going to punish you as he did. And he'd have had Berrettini in the semis, and he'd have had Medvedev in the final. We're probably looking at a Medvedev Grand Slam win, but who knows? And then coming to Felix, yeah, which of the two, if you had to say, look, I think it's going to be this one, and this is why.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, both of them started the season very well. I think I would lean slightly towards Felix, mostly because of Bercy. I mean, if he keeps playing like this, like he's been this year, regardless of the like injury against Vavasori in Rotterdam, seems like he should be back in the mix for most of these indoor titles, regardless of the level, really. again, they will need the stars to align. Last year, obviously, Felix was in the Madrid final, almost won it, but I think that was, well, yeah, that was like a maximum example of stars aligning. I don't think this is really going to be happening. Shapo, to me, maybe has slightly higher peak, but Felix is a little bit more reliable. I know that with him, it's maybe not really saying all that much, but yeah, I do think he is. So I kind of trust him more to be a contender for, I don't know, especially Paris, of course. Shapo could win more events. Like Shapo could win a clay event. It's not impossible. Well, Felix almost won Madrid, I guess. Shapo had this Rome run, for example, right? I think Shapo is in the mix for more events, but he doesn't have one where he is as good as Felix potentially could be in Bercy. So I would probably lean Felix slightly, but it's a tough one, yeah. I definitely thought at some point, Ozan, that Shapo was capable of winning a slam. Do I still think? I mean, right now it's definitely below 50%, and it's, significantly below 50%. But at some point, I definitely did think he was. Also, when do we next see Nishash and Lerner? Lerner is playing Delray Beach this week, and Nishash was actually in the qualifying, but he pulled out last minute, so not sure what that was about. But yeah, not this week yet.
Slightly disappointing that Tommy Paul wasn't able to make the final in Dallas. I've seen that he's pulled out of Delray Beach, so I don't know if there's a small issue there or whether it's just exhaustion or just
it was like shoulder or something like that. But obviously, it could have been maybe like just something he wrote there. I mean, Delray at 250 between the events. I don't know. No idea, but I think it was a shoulder, maybe.
I don't know how heavy his schedule is. Is he signed up for Acapulco as well or anything like that?
Definitely. I mean, he made the final, right? Last year, or no, not last year. 2 years ago, and last year maybe a semi. I don't know, something like that.
That might play into it. Anyway, let's move on to
left shoulder. Sorry, I was thinking right, but it was actually left shoulder.
Okay. Casper Ruud, by the way, if you'd have just left that, imagine people getting angry in the comments, like, "Oh yeah, you got the wrong shoulder, Damien."
By the way, left shoulder is the same one as in Australia, right? In that opening round match against O'Connell when he couldn't hit through his two-hander. So I guess maybe it's that issue, sort of like lingering.
Okay, well, let's hope that he can get it cleared up, especially as the Sunshine Double approaches. Casper Ruud making the final. A lot of talk about the aggression in his game, but we've probably been talking about that since Estoril last year, you and I at least. But making an indoor final, but, the run, Munar in the semis, not too bad for Casper. Obviously, Dallas, I think, as well, being a bit lighter in terms of the competitors there compared to Rotterdam. But any thoughts on Casper making the final?
Yeah, I mean, another player who indoors hasn't had that much success, obviously. Dallas was slower at this new venue, definitely. But he had some good moments. The breakpoint saves, I know they were against Duckworth, but he was just peaking on serve and +1 forehands in the key moments there. Okay, the match against Munar is pretty wild, but he still survives that. It did feel like by the time he made the final, and he was the first player in the final, right? Chapo and Paul were playing later, that he's probably going to lose to either of these guys. I think there was a bit of a discrepancy in terms of the playing quality, let's say, between Casper and Tommy and Dennis. But, doesn't hurt to make a final and just to get some more of that aggressive mindset that we know by now he really needs. That's also a positive. And nasal strips as well. Phenomenal week for nasal strip companies.
Indeed. I recall them being quite big in the 90s with some footballers. But yeah, they seem to be making a comeback. I'm guessing that some people have been talking about Canadian comedians and funny people and famous Canadians in the chat, given this comment from Dave. I hope that someone highlights Leslie Nielsen. But if they haven't, I'm doing so now.
Jim Carrey is
Jim
Canadian
Carrey,
as well?
Yeah. Not necessarily a comedian, but so is Alanis Morissette. Jim Carrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, Jim. I'm not having to go at your comedic.
I thought you wanted to make that case. He did have some drama roles,
Yeah, he played comedic roles, but he also did Saturday Night Live for a while. So I think that certainly counts.
Yeah, he qualifies as a comedian. Alanis Morissette, probably not.
Ozan, we do need to get some. No, Lance Morissette, definitely not.
Leonard Cohen, definitely not.
That would be ironic.
Justin
though,
Bieber qualifies as a comedian.
Yeah.
And Drake as well.
If she became a comedian, it would be ironic for sure. Anyway, nasal strips.
You had to
Ozan.
repeat it because I didn't hear it the first time. Okay.
I know. And I just want to make sure the audience heard it if no one else. Ozan, yes, that's something we should get on board, but we'll need to get some nasal people involved on this. And when I say nasal people, I mean nasal strip people rather than just nasal people. I don't know if they're any good for us.
Nasal people.
Yeah, I don't know who they are. Yeah, it's a profession that's yet to be invented, but who knows? Okay, a lot of people talking about the Super Bowl as well. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, Jaime Muna. Give us some thoughts on him before we leave Dallas.
Incredible. I mean, honestly, the fact that you can kind of like work so hard apparently in the off season on like a certain part of your game that was underdeveloped and that never really anyone thought that it has any potential to develop, and yeah, that it works out so well for him. I mean, obviously at this point we also have to start asking like long term, how is it going to be looking? Right now he's going to be playing the golden swing, whether it's also going to be helping him out there. But I think it's very inspirational, yeah, that you can definitely just like, even at this stage of your career where Munar is not really in his formative years, he's not old, definitely not even in tennis terms, but he's not in his formative developmental years anymore. He basically is what he is as a player, you'd think, and yet he's able to come up with something. Now the question is whether this is just like a brief moment when he surprises the tour with a new version of his game, and then after a couple of months, it just like dries out. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we can learn from going forwards. That like it's worth to maybe take a bit of a different approach during the off season, try to find a new strategy, develop a part of your game that was previously not a thing really. And yeah, I love this for him. I think this is really a great story, one of the best ones that we've had so far on the ATP Tour this season.
Indeed. Okay, let's leave last week behind. Was there a tournament I've missed?
No, it was just a week of 2 ATP 500s on the main tour, yeah.
And let's look ahead. Let's do a quick couple of minutes. Oh, actually, just before we do, there was a question on Roland Garros. It was a bit left field, but I'm pretty sure we can address it quite quickly. I think it was basically what are we thinking ahead of Roland Garros? I know it's a long way in the future, and she did, or Manasvi, sorry, did apologize for the sort of randomness for it, but I did say we'll get to it. So, I mean, right now it's a 2-horse race, right?
Yeah, 51-49 Alcaraz, but if Sinner has a really good clay season, maybe I'll change my vote. But for now, 51-49 Alcaraz. I don't think anyone else is really like that much in the conversation. I know that Matthew, for example, was in the chat. He thought that Djokovic will have a good chance at RG. I'm definitely leaning more towards Australia and Wimbledon's from here. So I'm not including him. And also you've got Zverev, but I don't know. I mean, after this Australian Open final, it just feels a lot tougher to say that Zverev is going to deliver in a best-of-5 match against Zverev or against Alcaraz or Sinner. Although, yeah, on clay it's easier. So maybe we shouldn't just like underestimate him. But yeah, for me, still the slight edge is with Alcaraz, and until Sinner has just a stronger clay season than he's had so far.
For me, it's kind of as a percentage. I know what you mean by saying 51-49, and I would pretty much agree with that. But if you were looking at the sort of field and the chances, it would be sort of 40% Alcaraz, 39% Sinner, maybe 11% Zverev, and then the remaining 10% for everyone else, something like that. But you could even increase some of those percentages, especially for Alcaraz and Sinner. And yeah, Djokovic, I just need to see something more from him. If he has an incredible clay court season, but I don't think we'll see a lengthy clay court season from Novak, and we won't see lengthy seasons in any part of the year, really. I think he'll be skipping quite a few events. There has been today, it seems as though Stuart Fraser, the British journalist, suggesting that Murray's going to stay with Djokovic until Wimbledon at least. So,
and that Novak might play Doha. So maybe his season won't be as
Probably, yeah. But do you think he'll play Indian Wells and Miami? I think he might play Indian Wells, but he won't play Miami.
if he's playing Doha, then why not? I was just expecting him to be like, skip the entire month of February and then come back for the US. But clearly he wants a bigger schedule, heavier schedule, apparently. We'll see. Ozan, that's a comment from you about the hard courts in Buenos Aires, Rio, or in Santiago. I don't know if this is actually is this something that, is real? It's been suggested.
Yeah, the tournament director, I think, of Rio and Santiago have both suggested that they would be prepared to switch to hard courts. I wonder if there's some sort of pressure coming.
I'd hate it.
Yeah, I know. I think it'll be a real shame.
It would just lose the entire identity, right? I mean, obviously, it would make more sense for the events to be on hard courts because, as you guys are saying, Acapulco and everything, you can have. Well, Acapulco used to be on clay, right? And back in the day, it used to be like a longer clay court swing. Right now, yes, it would probably make more sense to just sort of like play on hard courts all the way until April. But I think then we kind of have to just give some other part of the season more clay court events. Like the tour would become very hard court oriented. I think that like one extra additional part of the clay season is very, very needed. It can't be just April until July and that's it. And the rest of the year we play on hard courts. I think that's completely wrong. So if we take that away from the Golden Swing, maybe I'm okay with this, but let's make another clay court swing in some different. Well, actually, there's no different part of the season because you're probably not going to make a clay court swing in October or September. So I think it's the perfect one, really. And yeah, I mean, the tour would just literally lose. The Golden Swing would lose all its identity if that happened, and I would hate to see it. I think it would be a massive mistake. What is Matthew saying here? Tennis play. Yeah, I mean, if we lose another part of the clay season, then it's really becoming like a very hardcore oriented ATP tour.
Yeah, and we're going to get more boring tennis tournaments, and we don't want that, I don't think. Listen, regarding Buenos Aires, I have mixed feelings on it. I think Buenos Aires does seem to be the last one to comment on this, but it doesn't mean that it won't be also adapting. So I know someone's sort of saying that Buenos Aires is sticking up for his values. I just don't think it's been asked. They are obsessed in Argentina, particularly since Dallas got upgraded to a 500. And it's like they're constantly asking every single player there, whenever they have a press conference, do you think we should be at 250? Do you think we should be at 250 or 500? All the players, of course, are giving the nice positive answers. Yeah, why not? Should be, especially the Argentinian players, of course. But on the other hand, Buenos Aires, it does feel the stadium's great, but it also maybe needs to be a little bit more bigger thinking in terms of, water fountains. I know it's only a small thing, but they don't have water fountains there. And I think that's a big thing. I think it may even be contravening some legislation in Argentina. I also think that perhaps Diego Schwartzman gave what potentially will be his last ever press conference. Sadly, it was all in Spanish. So his entire English speaking or English understanding, I should say, audience, which I'm sure is huge. I mean, we even know one from this parish, Jethro, would be very keen to hear his thoughts, but it was all done in Spanish. I've been there during the press conferences as well, and it is a bit of a mess because there's just, you've actually got sometimes the player will give an answer in English, and then there'll be a translation into Spanish given by someone, and then it's just very disjointed, and I think they're not thinking big enough. They keep sort of, they're not thinking big enough, basically, in many respects, in my opinion. They should try and attract more international journalists as well, in my opinion, and that might help. This is not me going on.
I mean, it's not easy, when it comes to like South America, it's pretty secluded. Like, obviously, there's this one Portuguese-speaking country, and then all the rest are Spanish in South America. So, like, to get someone who's not a Spanish speaker, that's a massive trip. So
no, Dave, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that he wasn't, given any questions in English. Diego can converse completely fine in English. He just wasn't, and that I don't think the people organizing the press conference thought about it, or there just wasn't any, English-speaking journalists there. I don't know, but I think it could be nuanced, even if you just began the press conference with the person, because I know one of the people working there is British, for example. So, she could just begin the press conference by saying a couple of words in English, and then we'll switch to Spanish, or the other way around. Anyway, there we go. Buenos Aires, which is getting underway this week. Let's let's talk about that. Let's not talk about João Fonseca Thomas Martin Echeverri, because I know Damien and I have Vanch and I have already spoken about that first round match in depth. Do check out our video on that. But are there any other first round meetings that you're particularly excited about? Of course, Schwartzman, who we just touched on, Nicolas Jarry. Is there a chance Schwartzman can get one win in his homeland before bowing out of the sport?
Seems like it. I mean, in Rosario, he took a set of the eventual champion, Camilo Carabelli. Seems like he actually trained for this and, kind of got ready for this match. And Jari is, of course, a very inconsistent player. The finalist from last year, but even that final performance against Diaz Acosta was a bit shocking. So,
weird, yeah.
Yeah, could be a chance, I think. I wasn't too optimistic ahead of this comeback for Diego. I mean, in 2024, it was clear that his head isn't in it anymore. Like, he doesn't really want to keep fighting. And maybe for this mini send-off, he actually has recovered and has got some game. I mean, of course, Ugo Carabelli lost a set to everybody last week, still won the title, all 5 matches. But, it shows something. And Diego, I think, in that match had his flashes. I think at this point, that's all you really want, right? I mean, it's his hometown. It's his favorite event on the calendar. Just wants to give the fans some good action. Doesn't really matter if he wins, but of course, if he does and gets 2 matches, that's even better.
We will have a watch-along for Schwartzman Jarry tomorrow, so do tune in for that. We've actually got 3 watch-alongs, I think, for tomorrow, with João Fonseca against Echeverri on our list, as well as Jabeur against Qin Wenjing in Doha. So that to look forward to tomorrow. Anyway, sticking with Buenos Aires for now. Any other first rounds? Jaime Faria, friend of the show, went out in first round of qualifying. That, probably took me by surprise a little bit. But anything else from either qualifying or the first rounds that you'd like to talk about in Argentina?
I mean, Navone Comesaña is such a ridiculous rivalry. Fran once led 6-love, now it's 6-4. And just to see them again after 13, 14 months of not playing each other, that's going to be fantastic. One of them will face Rune as well. You might remember from Madrid last year, it was a great Navone-Rune clash. And of course, Sebastian Baez is also kind of the player to watch, I think, here. Not necessarily that I'm saying he's going to do well. I'm just saying that, this is a huge part of the season for him. He's defending so many points and hasn't really done all that much to suggest that he will be, let's say once more a contender to win back-to-back titles. But at the same time, this is always Baez, right? He just kind of does nothing in January, then shows up in the Golden Swing and he's a beast. So let's see how that goes this time. Schwartzman does not deserve a watch along. Wow. Let's yes, Keen, I probably know why your sentiment is like this, but it's his last match. Let's give the guy some spotlight and let's give the guy some applause here. I mean, he was a very significant player on the tour, and despite being, of course, El Peque, I think his career was quite grande.
Brenda, if you were at the Madrid final, whether that was last year or the year before, and you dozed off, then I don't know. I haven't even got a response to that because
were you already tired?
It was 2024 was the best match of the year, without a doubt. That's just obvious. 2023, I think it was a contender for match of the year. I think I put it second in the end, but I would be fine if somebody had it first. Clearly we have very different views on tennis, Brenda, but that is fine. Okay, cool. Let's switch then. I think what else have we got? Marseille next week. Anything there that sort of grabs your attention?
I mean, Medvedev playing at 250 for the first time in ages. That's kind of the big story there. We've got this beautiful second quarter, which currently has Otto Virtanen up a break in the third set over Korda. And if we get a Virtanen and Medvedev quarterfinal, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's definitely going to be something that you do out of joy. In the bottom half, Hurkacz and Humbert, they met in the semis last year. Very likely that they're going to do it again, looking at the draws. But yeah, that second quarter, I think especially, is so entertaining. We're going to have Medvedev playing Khachanov in the second round. And then if Virtanen goes on to beat Korda, maybe he can also defeat Nardi Altmaier and play one of them in the quarters. I think that would be fantastic. as my wild prediction for 2025, I remember saying that Otto Virtanen would win an indoor 250. So, well, this week might be a chance. But let's see if he can first, of course, defeat Sebi. This would be the biggest win of his career. Currently, he's 2-1 up with a break in the third.
Cool. Anything else in terms of Marseille? I mean, as I say, it's just got underway. I mean, Medvedev 250. Maybe he can just get over that that hump that we've spoken about.
Well, he took a wild card even before losing to Bellucci, so clearly he felt like he needs more match rhythm and practice. I think he might not be in Dubai this year, if I remember correctly, or something like that. So yeah, I think that the chances there, especially after Mpechi Pericard withdrew, like the first few rounds are pretty easy for him. Then the semis, that tough quarter that I mentioned. So like Virtanen, Medjedovic, Khachanov, one of these guys, I think definitely could beat Daniil. But he can get two pretty easy matches here, seemingly, after Mpechi Pericard withdrew. That was kind of crucial. So maybe he can play himself into form. And I mean, it's clear what he's playing this for, right? Yeah, I mean, I think he can actually get something very positive out of this week. He's a former champion as well of this event in 2021. And what was another comment? There was one that I wanted to say something about. Oh yeah, what was the atmosphere like in Lille? Honestly, great, especially evening matches. They played. They had the evening session for the first time in tournament history, apparently, and the evening matches were really full of people. Of course, a lot of matches were all French, but like the public didn't care. Even at all French matches, they were fantastic. And in terms of the fact that it's basically on the Belgian border, actually not as many Belgian fans as I thought. Maybe if blocks would have reached like the semis or the final, maybe it would have been bigger. I think in Belgium, there's also like this feud, at least that's what a friend told me this week, about between the Dutch part and the French part. So Blocks is from the Dutch part. And that maybe also contributed to the fact that not that many fans showed up. But there were a few Belgian fans. There was like this one group of 4 or 5 people with, a lot of gear who came by to see Delors and Desailly in the doubles. And then they stayed also for Blocks' first round match against Aziz Dugas, our friend. So yeah. That was kind of how it was. I was expecting a bit more in terms of the support for Blocks, but maybe on Saturday and on Sunday. Okay, Ghosty, it's not on the Belgian border, but like how many kilometers is it? I haven't checked, but like what, 20 or something like that?
Not
I mean, yeah.
Just a quick word, actually, before we move on to Delray Beach. Just talk to us about Lucas Pouille and what happened to him in that final.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a heartbreaking image, that's for sure. First of all, he falls on the floor, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's probably gonna get back up, right? I didn't know that it was gonna be so serious. I think some of the other people around me also didn't. Like, someone started laughing, and like the crowd was pretty loud. I was like, at that point, I was like, oh, guys, I mean, look at it. This isn't good. And yeah, also just like overall this week, I talked to Pouille a couple of times. Some of the answers he gave as well. Like right now, I'm looking at them in a different light because of what happened later. And I just hope that this isn't how his career ends. He already had the surgery. We have the photo on the screen. Hopefully it's going to be good. I mean, apparently like a complete rupture of the Achilles is it can take you out for like almost a year even. And okay, the guy isn't 40, but still, for someone who has struggled even with depression, with many mental issues because of the injuries that he suffered throughout his career. Yeah, it's rough. And I still have a lot of respect for him too, for showing up at that trophy ceremony. Honestly, if I was him, I would just stay in the locker room. But he comes out on crutches. He gives a speech where he says that, well, he thinks that it's probably that complete rupture, but he will have obviously some tests and he's going to try what he can to come back. Later that day, we found out already that, yes, he was absolutely right, that his Achilles is just like completely done and just requires surgery. And yeah, I mean, at that point, what can you do? It was definitely quite emotional, even like for me as a pretty like neutral bystander there in Lille. I definitely joined in on the applause for him. And And at this point, there's really nothing you can do. Of course, we also had John also had some time with Pui in Estoril last year, right? And I think that I can say for like the both of us that like both on and off the court, he's like absolute class, such a nice guy. And yeah, it's just such a shame that basically his body is not ready to compete professionally, at least not in the long term. He still had a fantastic career. Hopefully, it's not the last match. I would love to see Luka Pui's last match someday, but hopefully, just a different one on his terms.
I mean, he's 30 right now. I think he's going to turn 31 in just under 2 weeks. So unfortunately, he's not going to have the best birthday, I'm sure. But I do also remember Vanch suggesting big things for him this year. I think it was like we had a question which was like, give us a sort of semi-random prediction for 2025. And I think his semi-random prediction was Luka Pui to make a round of a slam. Do you remember that? A second.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because it was supposed to be like a bolder prediction or something like that. And I mean, Luka Pui literally made Wimbledon third round in 2024. So
yeah, right. Yeah,
didn't really feel like Vanch was going out on a limb there. But
it's
right now, exactly. Right now, very possible that we're not going to see him playing again in 2025. Sorry.
Yeah, but fingers crossed he does make a comeback of sorts in 2026. And at least gives us another year perhaps on tour, or depending on how he's feeling mentally and physically, he might just sort of say, we'll do a farewell. But that's a long way away, and get well soon, Luka. Okay, I did say we want to have a quick look towards Delray Beach, where we've got Taylor Fritz as the number 1 seed. He, of course, gets a bye into the second round where he'll play the winner of Bu and Hijikata. Taylor Fritz, I think, has had a little bit of a wobble recently in terms of his form after a pretty good sort of 2024, reaching a career high of 4 in the rankings, of course. Any thoughts on Delray Beach and some of these first round clashes? Nishikori and McDonald there, Duckworth, David Fekina, Teen against Walton. I saw Vanch getting very excited about Teen once again. Eubanks against Opelka. Opelka, of course, having an interesting week last week in Dallas. It sort of felt like a while ago when he was telling sort of someone to basically get out of the stadium and a couple of expletives in there last week, making a few headlines for that. But of course, that was en route to a victory over Cam Norrie. Trotter against Nakashima, Rinderknecht against Diallo. There is Cam Norrie up against Svider. Svider, tell us something about him.
I mean, they're playing right now, by the way. Svider kind of has the same game play style as Norrie, just right-handed. So, like, if you like Cam Norrie's game, you're probably gonna like it. Yeah, the backhand down the line is pretty lovely, but like he has 0 serve, 0 forehand, and like is just a bit of a rope-a-dope type of player. Like he really needs he needs to lure you into stuff and then kind of just work his way out of it. Similar to Norrie, I think, in many regards, despite being a right-handed player. Not too high a ceiling, but last year he did almost reach the top 100. He played a match for it against Kotov in Winston-Salem, and there were also some issues. I think his dad had cancer or something like that, so probably he's mentally it was also quite a struggle year for him. Going forward, I think maybe he breaks the top 100 at some point of his career, but I don't think he's ever going to be like a proper threat on the main tour for in the long term. And what we were going to talk about, Delray Beach. So Fritz has won it twice in a row. I kind of don't know how he doesn't again. I mean, first round looks great for him. Maybe there's like a Nishikori performance, that suddenly we have that peak K again, which like right now it just seems like Nishikori can be anything from top 10 to top 800 depending on the day. But like if he doesn't lose to Nishikori, I don't really know who he loses to. There's a big gap as well ranking-wise between him and the other seeds. Yeah, Mikkelsen could be a thing, sure. Paul, of course, withdrew, so that also contributes to Taylor just becoming an even bigger favorite. Alex is the...
Who's number 2? I don't see who number 2
There's no number 2 because Tommy withdrew after the draw was made.
Got it.
So Giron took over his spot in the draw, and Rinderknecht landed the 9th seeding.
Yeah, probably gives you.
Korda made the final in Delray, Ghosty. He lost to Hubert Hurkacz. That was 2020, and he was injured in the final. I don't remember if he retired, but he was definitely injured in the final.
Yeah, if Taylor Fritz is fit and firing, it should be his title to lose. But yeah, let's keep an eye on Mickelson as well. Of course, he has a buy-in to the second round where he'll play the winner of Mo and Shevchenko. Okay, I think that's it. I just want to give a little bit of housekeeping, telling some people what's on the horizon this week. We've got 3 watch-alongs tomorrow, which begins tomorrow morning. With Doha, Mario, and probably myself will be bringing you Jabeur against Qinwen Zheng, which I think is a pretty exciting one. And then we've got 2 matches from Buenos Aires in the evening to bring you, the first of which will be João Fonseca against Echeverri, followed by Diego Schwartzman in what could be the last match of his career against Nicolas Jarry, with at least Damien, but maybe 1 or 2 more as well. Anything else? I think Carson might be on the Doha match that I highlighted between Jabeur and Qinwen Zheng as well. And a couple of interviews probably this week. I always say probably, it's not 100% sure because we haven't fixed a time and a date yet, but I will be speaking to Blair Henley about what she got up to both in Australia and then, of course, in Dallas last week, where she was doing a lot of media work. And also going to speak to, for the first time, a Brazilian journalist, Renata Dias, who is also a former player but turned journalist and even beach tennis coach. We'll speak a little bit about the Rio Open, João Fonseca, and also her career to date as well. So that's to come. Damien, I think I've done all things ATP. Something is amusing you in the chat, or is amusing you elsewhere? I bet Fritz doesn't.
No, yeah, it's the male-female conversation that we had a while ago.
Ladies, gentlemen,
about Swarna, Terry.
Oh, okay. Is Swanner in the chat? I didn't see Swanner in the chat today.
I don't think so. I think Ghosty just mentioned her, him.
I saw them being beckoned. I saw them being beckoned by our good friend Nerland. Basically, he was like, "Where the hell is Swarner today?" Which is obviously quite amusing. But I think we've done pretty much all things ATP, right? There's nothing I've missed.
Yeah, I think we're fine.
Great. So on that bombshell, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.